Let's get salty!
Everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and we are nearly a week since the release of the Great Dark Beyond, and one thing is pretty clear looking at the stats over the new decks over the past week is that something is not quite right. The decks have not yet quite taken off. Sorry for the horrible Starship pun, but I want to go over exactly what's going on, why I believe it to be a problem of prior sets, and why I'm very concerned we're just gonna buff everything and keep creating the same situation that we're literally in right now because of increased power levels and buffs. And again, it's all subjective. If you disagree, discuss in the comments down below. And as always, if you enjoy the content on the channel, feel like I've earned your subscription, please hit that sub button down below. Give the video a like as we're on the road to 90,000 subscribers. So I wanted to highlight this tweet here by Rose HS or whatever. There's a lot of letters in there. Basically highlighting all the decks that are going to be brought to the Chinese World Qualifiers base, I believe it says November 11th. So starting today to the 17th, and the decks that they have picked to bring. And you will note something that it's almost zero new decks. And that's kind of startling, right? You got a whole new expansion coming out. And if you look at the decks here, almost every player is bringing Rogue, which I keep having people telling me Rogue is bad. No, Sonya Rogue is broken. It's been broken forever. It's just more at that higher level. And it's a deck that has infinite mana scams, infinite damage OTKs. And then you have Orb Big Spell Mage, which again, remember that video we had of like, I'm kind of worried that these things would still dominate. It's kind of happening because or Big Spell Mage and one Elemental Mage being brought because there's a giant scam deck that I feel like is launching a Starship every turn after turn 5, right? With the Sunset Volleys and the Tsunamis back to back to back to back, right? Basically, they just get to launch their Starship without working for it. Alonius Druid being brought, another OTK deck. Pipsy Paladin, which is another con man abusing deck, Insane Mana Cheat, and Nostalgia Shaman, which is just a really good deck. I mean, it's got some mana cheat and some scams going there, but overall, I feel like it's more on the reasonable end. And then the only new deck here, if I move my stupid face, is Starship DK, which, by the way, someone has recently hit rank 1 legend with Rainbow Starship. I'll try and have a video on that later today. Gonna try and highlight it because any new deck to highlight that's good, I will try and do. So yeah, stay tuned possibly for that. That's what's being brought is Starship DK. One of the only things out there, the Rainbow version. And you got one Odin Warrior, another OTK deck, and one Pirate DH for aggro, right? A couple of Hunters for aggro, but you'll know, almost nothing new. And I kind of figured this was going to happen because I'm looking at the cards and all that stuff from the latest set, which I am going to say right out the gate, I think this expansion is awesome. The flavor is great, and the design is all towards building up progressively larger minions on your board, whether it's starships and building up a big starship and getting that reward, or in the case of like priest or mage or the Draenei classes, playing Draenei's completely, improve the next one you play, rewarding you for playing for board. But when we have a Hearthstone metagame that has been pushed this way, most of these decks have been buffed. Almost all these decks have been buffed already. Again, Conman being the biggest outlier of like, what were they doing with that buff, right? Being able to replay your best cards because you play a tourist. The tourist upside should be, I get to play another class's cards. That's the reason. No, Conman just lets you play your cards again. And that was because of a buff. And Sonya Rogue, for some reason, again, I've been advocating for Sonya to be changed for so long because it just promotes infinite mana scams, especially with Grifta and the damage amulet. Infinite damage, and you just die from in hand. I don't care what starship you build or what Draenei's you play. You can't compete with Tsunami on turn 5. You can't compete with Pipsy into Ziliax on turn 5 or a Conman into another Titan. Like, that's been the thing for a while, and it's been left unchecked. And now they put an expansion where if you look at the Great Dark Beyond cards, none of them are like outside of Quasar, which is like the biggest outlier. It makes no sense in the context of the set. It's due to get nerfed. Talked about it to death, but every other card, like there's not big, massive mana cheat scams. You got Murmur, I guess, but for the most part, they're just very powerful cards that can do very powerful things. But that's about it. Whereas you look at these decks, you got very powerful cards that like double, triple, quadruple dip on each other and do outright broken stuff. And the only way for new stuff to compete with that is to somehow be better than these decks. And do you want to live in a world where you have decks that are going to make big spell mage not worth playing because turn 5 tsunami, turn 5 sunset volley is not near good enough, right? And there's people that are advocating for that. I've seen at least on Reddit a certain podcast summary of like, we need to buff more. We need crazy, bold, powerful buffs. And I'm just like, the game is so fast right now. Like, you don't see a Reno deck on this list for a reason. And that's another contentious card where at lower MMR in particular, your starships get punished by Reno, which I will agree is a frustrating issue. You've got Yogg as well, which just punishes starships. There's so many things in the game that punish you for playing for board, and so many things that reward you for going for big scams or OTKs. That's the way to go if you're going to be competitive, right? And if you look at the meta itself, it reflects that. It's the same deal. You look at all the decks doing well on HS Replay, pretty much like Burn Shaman, you got aggro and combo decks and scam decks, right? You got the only newest working thing, right, is Death Knight, because their core cards is so freaking good. I bet you the Starship part's the worst part of it, but Death Knight cards are great, including some of the cards they got. Same on Guru, the meta breakdown, very similar. And it's just like, I feel like the devs have recognized we need more board-based combat in the game, right? We need more of this in the game. This expansion really, really focuses on that, but you can't just magically make it work without fixing the prior issues, which they have neglected to do. They have barely nerfed stuff over the past like expansion and a half. We had one kind of good patch last patch where they started to dress up, but you know, we need a lot more of that. And there's people that are advocating for buffs. So I'm scared, really scared what that next balance patch is going to look like, because I think this is one of the coolest, best expansions we've had. It could use some tweaks. I'm not saying don't buff anything. A card like, let's say, Interstellar Wayfarer could be 3 mana. At 4 mana, this card is way too expensive, but you could, like, a buff like that is fine. But overall, I don't think we want bold buffs. I think we need bold nerfs so we can finally see a change to these decks being the best, to seeing the big scam OTK decks, those two combos or hyper aggro dominating the meta for a very long time now. I would like to get back to board-based Hearthstone. It's been a long time. I feel like Sunken City kind of hit that right. Nathria kind of hit that right. But ever since Showdown of the Badlands with the Highlander cards, we've gone away from that. And it's been that way ever since. And I would like to see a return to that. And a bold thing would be mass nerfs, mass changes, significant changes, because for the majority of these cards, they're not rotating next year. It's the same thing. Like, remember that early access brawl? It was all dominated by these style of decks, and the early access brawl only had cards from this year, not last year. Yeah, the Titans leaving will help. Excavate Reno cards will help, but it won't change this equation. And unless we see drastic changes, I don't see it happening. But yeah, they could go the road of just, let's go through these cards and buff make Gorm 2 mana and a turn faster, or, you know, try and make the scams better. Let's make detailed notes 1 mana and cheat 3 mana, right? Yeah, you can make every deck a crazy infinite mana cheat scam deck. Then what are we playing? Are we playing Hearthstone? Not really. We're just back to Stormwind of like dying to crazy crap every game by turns 5 and 6. We're already close to that. That's what that would accomplish. So I'm curious to hear what you guys take on it. Obviously mine is, I think the power level of the game has been left unchecked for much too long. And for any new expansion to have a drastic impact on the meta has to be outright broken. And if the next set has to be outright broken, then the next set has to be outright broken. And it creates a situation where, yeah, Festival didn't blow people away and wanted bold buffs, and now this isn't blowing people away. Everything's Rostigan's Rumble, when people obviously didn't play Rostigan's Rumble because a ton of these cards are seeing play. The archetypes itself, not as much, but still, go back to those times. It was slightly different than what we're doing now. Anyways, yeah, let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments down below. Again, huge fan of this expansion. I want these cards to be good, but not at the expense of becoming ultra solitaire. When you have a card like Ethereal Oracle, is kind of help pushing that as well, by the way. One of the best cards of the set is just leading to more OTKs, right? Like, That's kind of just the problem I'm going through. And I want this set to succeed because I love it. I think it's great. I just worry that, yeah, we're going to push for more power, more fun equals dying on turns 5 and 6 for every single game because no cards cost mana and I take infinite damage. Anyways, hopefully you'll have that gameplay video later today. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day and stay salty, my friends.